Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Endless Celts Podcast. Today is Monday, the 19th of February. I'm just checking there, get my dates right. And I am joined by Anthony Squared. So, just to get this out of the way, McGinty, do you mind if I revert back to calling you McGinty? Do I have your permission for that, please?
Of course you do, man. I'm surprised you even bother asking. It's kind of like a lifelong thing now.
I know. I just don't want to be a dick about it. You know, it's best asking for permission.
Make it
so,
easy.
Tonight, a lot of soul searching. Not the most easy of times to be a Celtic fan, but you know we're long enough in the tooth. You know, we've been here before, so we're going to try not to get carried away tonight. However, we are going to have some honest discussions. We've got Anthony, who's going to definitely give us a bit of balance and perspective, who's going to kind of rein us in if we get a wee bit too negative tonight. And McGinty, we do have the swear jar open for you as well, just to kind of keep you calm. But yeah, looking forward to tonight. However, before we kind of like start off with the negativity, how you guys doing? Anthony, tell me something positive. How was your day?
Not too bad, mate. Obviously, it wasn't obviously we're obviously going to do a deep dive in the game very soon, so that was a frustrating day at the office, to say the least. But apart from the result, I actually had quite a nice chilled weekend. So I can't complain. I had a lovely drive through to Stirling in the morning before the match for my boys' game as well. So it's no often I'm down that side of the world. So that's my one sunshine part for the weekend.
Excellent, pleased to hear. And McGinty, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, not too bad as well. Worked over the weekend. Unfortunately, missed the game, so I'll be looking towards you guys to fill me in on the negativity. But generally, I think I'm making peace with what's happening at the club just now. Still raging though.
That's alarming. Whenever McGinty is accepting his fate. McGinty, what's your football top? It looks like Barcelona, but what era is it from?
It's the Barcelona one, and I cannot remember the year from the life of me. It's just escaping, but it's around about 2000, 2001. One of the kind of more original Nike ones after the Kappa days.
Is that Frank Rijkaard days when he was still the manager?
No, I think Rijkaard was after that.
Was he? Okay.
I think he was.
Excellent. Well, I had a decent day today. Yeah. I made two curries. I made two veg curries, one with potato and cauliflower, and the other one with chickpeas. Really, really nice. One spicy, one mild. Really enjoyed it. I'm popular tonight in the household. Anyway, guys, welcome to all the viewers. Hope you are all doing well. Get your comments coming in. Are you where are you right now and the kind of the prospect of the remaining part of the season? Let us know. Get your comments coming in. We'll try to bring up as much as we can. But McGinty, do you want to play the segment to let the boys and girls know what we're in store for tonight?
Of course.
Excellent. Well, that is indeed a preview of the menu for this evening. Before we do get into it, before we do talk about the Celtic and Kilmarnock game, we are going to open with a wee segment because we've got Anthony on tonight. Anthony, I don't think I've been on a pod with you tonight been on a pod with you before. So I was going to do the wee kind of quick fire questions. And again, it's just to kind of find out where you are as a Celtic fan, where you fit on the spectrum as such, and just to kind of get a wee bit of insight as to what your memories are, what your favourite players are, that sort of thing.
Sounds good.
So we will start off with your first ever Celtic memory.
First memory, probably just my first game, probably, to be honest, Gav, which would have been August '96. It was what's now, well, the opening of what's now the Lisbon Lions stand, East Stand. We played Cadetti's former club, Sporting Lisbon, in a pre-season friendly, and can still remember practically the full day, like going through in the train, had my full Bumblebee kit on. I was like proper John Terry material, and I went into town, get the Big Mac beforehand and all that. It was absolutely amazing. And, you know, walking into the place, it was just, you know, it was only 3/4 complete at that point, but it was like something you'd never seen before. You know, it was like something out of a film. And we went 2-0 up, but then Sporting Lisbon pulled it back and it finished 2-2. But that was my introduction, and I got the buzz that day, and it's never really went away since.
Nice. Good memories. The 90s are a curious decade for Celtic fans because apart from all the heartbreak, there is still a lot of kind of positivity. You know, I think it was just because we're on the cusp of something big. Fergus Buchan, Tommy Burns, you know, and we were kind of turning the tide. So a good memory. The Three Amigos, but which one were you most fond of?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. I've got to say at the time, probably because he scored the first goal that I ever seen at Celtic Park in the flesh, but I did love Cadetti, just for the song as well. I mean, I suppose they all had the great tunes named after them, didn't they? But puts the ball in the netty and all that material. I'd probably say Georgie, but I loved them all, I have to say.
Excellent. And by the way, the Three Amigos, do you remember that movie from the 90s with Steve Martin and the two other guys? I forget their names.
Is it Martin?
Anyway,
it's no Martin Sheen, Martin Shaw.
Was that the wee kind of camp guy?
Aye. It's funny as, man. I love him.
Aye. Brilliant movie. Brilliant. Who was your childhood hero?
First one, Jackie McNamara, and broadening the horizon, probably Luke Skywalker, to be honest. But I know on a Celtic front, Jackie Mac was my first, because when we first started, my brother and my dad did the 2 season tickets when the stadium first reopened. And I think they still do it now. The middle part of the programme used to be able to take out and put up on the wall. So my big brother was just like an absolute shrine to Celtic. And it was all the usual ones, the Canio, Cadet, McStay and all that. But when I was wee, I couldn't pronounce Jackie's surname. I always pronounced it McNarama. So for whatever reason, it kind of stuck. And then when I went to my first game, you know, he was playing and stuff. So I've been fortunate enough to obviously meet him a few times over the years. And I always say, you are, like, for everyone else had Decanio and Cadet and whatever on their tops, and I always had McNamara 4. So got to be Jackie Mac.
Full marks for originality. Everybody would kind of go for your number 9s, your number 10s, number 7s, but to go for a fullback, he was a brilliant player. What's your favourite all-time formation?
Probably just because it was played in the Martin O'Neill era. It's got to be the old 3-5-2 for me. It was just, although we did have pace on the left and we had tricky players, but it seemed to all be about power as well in the middle of the park. You know, Lennon and Lambert were just like an extra protection for the boys at the back, and then you had Petrov's dynamism and Sutton, Larson, just we bullied teams to victory, Gav, and just it was the first formation that I'd seen Celtic play in where we dominated them. So for that, it's always got a special place in my heart.
Good stuff. On a scale of 1 to 10, I like this one. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you agree that the current board run our club well?
They run our club. Oh God, it fluctuates. Currently, I would say a generous 6.
It is. Maybe like a couple of months ago, it might have been a 7, but now it's going down.
But I think they certainly aren't filling up many trees at the moment.
That is true. Which one Rangers player did you fear playing against?
Good question. Probably in later years, I always used to, like Steve Davis always used to have a good game against us. I always just think he played well in the middle of the park. My younger days, it was probably the likes of Laudrup or Alberts always seemed to play well against us as well. Can't really think of one in particular. There was ones that you hated because they were, like, dickheads, but there was other ones that you didn't like because you knew they were good players, and obviously Laudrup and all of that fell into that category. But there was other guys that like Nacho Novo, you just wish you could fling your house at them, So they've got varying degrees of dislike.
Good answer. It was Alberts for me, definitely. Yeah. One historic Celtic player to complement our current team.
Oh.
Now, we have had Jota for this question, so...
Yeah, well, that's Ross brought it right up to date with that one, didn't he? I'm probably a wee bit... I can't really claim John Collins or Paul McStay. It was just before I started going to the game, so I'll stick with what, the ones I remember. And I just think someone in the middle of the park is what we're needing. Somebody in the middle at the back to push Kalmak forward. So I'd probably say either one of the two. I'll say Lambert before Lennon.
Mm-hmm. Can you imagine if Lambert was a one-man club for Celtic? That would have been unreal.
Oh, absolutely, man. I think I know we kind of talk about it sporadically in the group chat, however. So even despite how well liked he is, I still think he was underrated at just how good a player he was for Celtic.
Yeah, I think that's true. Especially in the Martin O'Neill era where you're playing with other flair players as well. Sometimes that does go under the radar. What was your most memorable European tie?
European tie. Probably say the Juventus game. Still, I know Barcelona. In fact, no, I'm going to change it. But to Barcelona, I know that's maybe a bit of a cop out, but there's more than one reason than just the Celtic score that night. It was a pretty good time all round. Some of which probably isn't for a family show such as this, but for so many reasons, the Celtic Barcelona game with Tony Watt scoring, probably my favourite day ever, to be honest.
Excellent. Random one. What's your favourite movie?
Favourite movie? I don't really have a favourite. Unlike the rest of the boys, I'm not much a film buff, Gav. But I am a bit of a nerd, so it's probably more franchises than actual films themselves, if that makes sense. But the one I've loved longest, as I say, Luke Skywalker is my hero growing up, so I've got to go Star Wars.
Fair dues. Neil Lennon, hero or villain?
Oh, absolute hero, man. Adore him. Absolutely adore him. Obviously sad the way it turned out, but you never know the way things are going. He might get a chance to redeem himself again. But no, adore him as a player. Adored the way he carried himself, defended the club, stuck up for himself and everything he went through to do what he did. Won a treble as a player and a manager. He's not just that, he's an icon for me. I can't speak highly enough of him.
Okay. What's your favourite Champions League final?
I've got an affinity for the red half in Manchester down south. So it's very boring. For the ones that I've seen, it would have to be 2-1 against Munich in '99. Again, a game I can still really remember watching the front room with my big brother. And we all wanted United to win that night, so special night.
I do remember that game. I remember I was watching it in my kitchen, and curious because you had Roy Keane out and Paul Scholes out. Like David Beckham was playing in the centre of midfield. You had Jesper Blomqvist on the left wing.
Mm-hmm.
I think Giggs might have been playing inside. No, Giggs was on the right. But I think Bayern battered them for about 70 odd minutes. But then Ferguson just keep going, and obviously the last few minutes of that game were you'll never forget that.
I mean, it's not one of the. It wasn't a great. There's, to be fair, there's not many European finals that always remember being actually a great affair. Maybe you would say Liverpool, Milan, but most of them are all quite tight knit, and it's just maybe moments that you remember. I quite liked Real Madrid Juventus a few years back. That was a good game, the one in Cardiff. I quite enjoyed that one, but for that moment, like one of the kind of JFK moments when you watch football, you can always remember where you were when it happened, and United 99 for me.
Excellent. Right, last question. In a must-win game, Kalmak or Bruni?
That's a brilliant question. And I've
Well,
heard you ask it a few times to the rest of the guys, and every time I'm like, I still can't do it. I would probably say if the next huge one is obviously April the 6th, and I would probably pick a peak Bruni for that one, just to kind of put that mob in their place, but love Kalmak to bits as well, and he's brought it in plenty of derbies as well, so here's hoping that continues. But I'd probably say just for that shithousery, shall we say, I'd pick Bruni for the next one at Ibrox.
Good answer. Well, that wraps it up. Thank you very much for that. I enjoyed that. So we are going to get into things. The main part of tonight's episode, of course, is Celtic and Kilmarnock and the fallout of that game. So Anthony, you were at the game, as was myself. McGinty, you've catched up with the highlights, I'm sure, yes?
A little bit, yeah. I've been busy.
Right. So we dropped points once more. I actually thought that the first half, although it wasn't, they never blew us away, I thought that the first half wasn't shite. Maybe I could probably come up with a better phrase than that to describe it. But whenever it got to half time, we were 1-0 up, and I thought we should have scored more. We should be more comfortable right now. Looking at some of the chances, like Palma, he bore down in goal. We cut them through on the inside, in the middle of the park, and the ball was on his left, and he just had to hit it first time, I felt, but he cut onto his right, and by that point he had two men in front of him, and that was Kilmarnock defended so resolutely, and they've obviously kind of got on the number this season. Derek McInnes, ironic that Derek McInnes struggled so much against Brendan Rodgers in his last time at Celtic, but this season Derek McInnes is really, really enjoying playing against Celtic, and we could see it. Ida had a header from Palma wing play, and he kind of failed to make contact with it. Kalmak came in, scooped it over the bar. Obviously, the Kyogo goal, that was actually a really well-worked goal. Anthony, what was your thoughts on that? Like, if you remember, Palma came in from the left, and that was one of the good bits that he had in the game, but it was almost like we were kind of crowding his work, and then the ball ended up going to Ralston, and he floated it over, and Kyogo was there, back post to head it in. Really nice, well-worked goal, I thought, a good team effort.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought you actually summed it up quite well there, Gav, and the fact that I thought the first half, I was there with my sister on Saturday, and we were like, this is looking better. It's certainly not the usual, when we're in full flight, that it looks a lot more effortless, but there just seemed to be, it's probably sounding a bit like Brendan himself here, but there was a bit faster tempo, I felt. I think there was an urgency to get things moving a bit quicker, and I did actually a brilliant ball in for Tony for the goal itself, and Kyogo. It was almost Henrik-esque, the way just that kind of deft wee touch with the head in the far corner, and the Kilmarnock goalkeeper had no chance. But I'm glad you brought up that attack in the first half, because I think that almost perfectly summed up just where the rut that we're in at the minute, because it was a great wee break. Kalmak done everything right, just brilliant pass on to Palma, and like you say, I think a fully confident Celtic side in full flight either hits that first time and it goes in, or even if he does cut inside and takes a shot straight up, that was the other thing. He cut inside and then sort of hesitated before he took the shot as well. It's almost like they're overthinking it, and when we're in full flight, it's a case of, oh well, sorry, we'll do this again in 30 seconds anyway. There's that kind of swagger in the middle of the park, but it was almost like we missed that one, and then it took a wee while before we got going again. And I think that was what's so frustrating. And like you say, the first half I thought great. The second half, now the more I see it, Bernardo's miss is actually worse than we were in line with at the time, and I thought, maybe it's maybe went out for a corner, maybe somebody's got a last ditch touch on it and it's went wide, because I thought he can't hit it that high and that wide from that angle, because they'd done everything right. We'd got the break of the ball and he made a total mess of it. But you know, you think about it, apart from that, I don't really recall too many like real chances that we created in the second half. And we were talking before we went on air there about where I sit in the south stand. It's all we always used to say, especially in Brendan's first season, even though we didn't actually used to be ahead that often under Brendan in the first half in his first tenure at the club, and it always used to be the guys running about us would be like, oh, that's all right, all the action happens down this way second half anyway, because it always just used to be, Tierney, Sinclair, Armstrong, everybody would just pile forward, and more often than not, the goals would pile up as well. But there was very little action down our side of the park second half, and that really concerned us. And I did think at one point, I thought about, is it going to be similar to the county game for a couple of weeks ago? Is it going to be a bit jittery near the end, but we'll see it out? But without trying to sound, you just felt for about 85 minutes. Even Cal Mack himself, normally the absolute essence of calm in the middle of the park, he made two really bizarre. I can't remember. Like, he tried to volley it, I think, in the middle of the park, and he totally missed it. And then normally you thought, well, it's going to fall back to him anyway, so he'll control it and we'll go again. But he totally tried to do the same thing again, and it went straight to the Kilmarnock player. And it just seemed we were inviting so much needless pressure on ourselves. I know that's not necessarily a new thing, the building for the back and whatever, but it just seemed that there was easier passes on than the ones we were trying to make. But by the same point, the easy passes we were making it was passing for passing's sake. And the longer and longer it went on at 1-0, and I did fear the worst. It was when Kevin Van Veen came on. I thought, this boy's, he's a big bruiser of a striker. And when you look at, by this point, obviously Scales and the rest of the boys, it's a makeshift defence, as we know. And we were punished. And if you don't kill games off, then you run that risk. And there did seem to be almost an inevitability about Kilmarnock scoring, and that's unforgivable, really, when you think about it.
Yeah. A couple of those incidents that you speak about, the Bernardo chance, I felt like, if I'm being very kind to him, I felt that he never managed to get the ball from under his feet. However, when you need a goal, you want more composure. You want people to be on their toes, ready for those chances. And he was kind of caught cold. The other thing with Cal McGregor, so he was kind of like in his own half, and like he had a radius of like 10 yards where nobody was near him, and the ball comes down, and you're thinking he's just going to, like, I don't know, put it on his knee and then bring it down or something, trap it. But he just took this wild swing, and it just propelled the ball back up in the air again. And it's a bad day if you see Cal McGregor doing it, because it seemed like it was infectious, that even he couldn't, even he couldn't insulate himself from the panic that was creeping through the Celtic ranks. McGinty, obviously you've caught up with the highlights. One kind of notable thing was that Palma was taken off at half time. Now, when I'm actually looking back at some of the kind of the highlights of the first half, so he had that chance where he was bearing down in goal. He was involved in our goal. He had a really good cross for Ida, who should have buried it with the head. But he's taken off at half time. Do you think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, I have been harsh with Palma, but I want to kind of hear your thoughts on it. James, in our podcast, has said that it's the style, not specifically about Palma, but it's the style of play which has been asked by Rodgers on the wingers, which is making them look inept. What's your thoughts on the Palma situation in general, by him getting hooked at half-time? That doesn't happen very often. What was your thoughts on it, mate?
I think it's quite harsh hooking a player at half-time, unless they've drastically underperformed or, running that risk of a severe red card is like, very imminent. I think it's pretty harsh to sub somebody at half-time. Again, obviously, injuries aside. It's got to be a confidence kind of kicker to somebody to say half time you're coming off, but no, I'm giving you the first 15 minutes of the second half. My bigger question for that is, was Yang the answer? And probably not. Were we ever going to get more out of Yang than you were getting out of Palma? No, not really. I was listening to the game while I was driving at work, and the one thing that I picked up most, I think most people probably agree with it, and you can allude a bit better than I can, but Anthony was saying it anyway, was the first half, we definitely sounded like we were playing a lot better than we normally would have. Like we're trying to take control of the game a little bit. It sounded more positive from the commentary of it. And the second half, it just sounded much more the kind of sideways passing, the possession for possession's sake. And I wonder if that was, again, this is more for you guys if you've watched the game. If you're taking somebody like Palmer off, one of the very few creative players that we've actually got just now, albeit, as we say, he's not playing the role that he's probably best suited for, and that comes down to the manager. But if you're going to hook him off, it's no wonder you then, in the second half, don't really create a lot more else, do we?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you think that that Palmer, what is his game? What is his game? What is he best at? Now, obviously, we know with the ball at his feet with space, he can be lethal. Somebody said it in the comments before that he's like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get with him. Alistair saying Palmer did more than Yang and Kuna did. Do you think that it makes me think of another player, a much higher quality player, the guy Jadon Sancho for Man U, and how he's now been exiled back to Germany. He doesn't have brilliant pace, but I think what he does, and perhaps what Palmer benefits from, is getting close to your teammates, doing the 1-2s. Anthony, do you think that that's something that Palmer would benefit from? Because it's almost like he's been left on his own on the wing, where he has to either cut inside or go down the line. And both of those things are very, very easy to nullify from a fullback's point of view because he doesn't have natural pace. So do you think that he probably benefits from working well with others, the 1-2s, but our style of play isn't really suited to that?
Yeah, I think that was one of the things. I mean, don't get me wrong, see when Yang came on, the first sort of 5-10 minutes, he actually beat a guy, his defender, a couple of times, and they flung a ball in. Obviously, it didn't come to anything, but that first 10 minutes of the second half, there was a bit of the crowd going, that's what we're wanting Palma to do more often, just take the ball, beat a guy and get the ball in. So, but then, to be fair, he was pretty ineffectual the rest of the half, but I think that's one of the frustrating things about Yang. But in terms of Palma, I think you're right, and I think probably Haksabanovic suffered for the same kind of thing last year. I think there was times where it had little flashes of brilliance, and we've seen the same for Palma this year with some great goals, and obviously especially that fantastic strike against Atletico at home as well. There's and the goal that, well, we thought it was going to be the winning goal. We did end up winning the game, but it was a bit more hairier than we thought that day at Fir Park when he flipped that ball in and it went in the far corner. So there's definitely a player there. Gav, I would totally agree with that, but also agree with the fact that I don't think he's been best utilised in terms of what he's best at. I think he's more technically gifted than he obviously is with pace. But I think that's the thing with the wingers at the moment. They've all got their own kind of their own unique traits, but it's trying to get it all to work together at certain points. I mean, again, don't like harping back too much, but you look at when in Brendan's first season, you had Forrest on the right, you had Sinclair on the left, and obviously Tierney overlapping. Sinclair predominantly, but also Lustig would get up and support Forrest as well. And then obviously we had Patrick Roberts on the bench as well, who came on, or when he started, he was a bag of tricks as well. But there just seemed to be more. The wingers and the strikers and the forward players just tended to be a bit more in sync than what the current guys are. It's almost like we're hoping for the ball to bounce to us or to catch a lucky break. There doesn't seem to be any kind of cohesive kind of strategy. I think we just look like a team absolutely bereft of confidence at the minute, and it's it's worrying because it's obviously now into the business point of the season, and we can only hope things improve soon.
I totally agree with you. Unfortunately, yes, we do look bereft of confidence. McGinty, one man who was in for a lot of criticism during the season, and who by all intents and purposes will very, very likely be leaving at the end of the season, Joe Hart. Now, it's a bad sign whenever you start to notice that your keeper is having big performances, because for Celtic, we normally don't rely on our keepers to have big performances in the domestic games anyway. But past few games, Joe Hart has been doing well. Yes, he does have his annoying traits where he seems allergic to catching the ball. He always likes to punch it. But shot stopping, he's been quite helpful recently. There was a chance in the first half where they had a quick corner, short corner, an in-swinger, and it was a bullet header straight at Hart. Now, it was kind of straight at Hart, fair enough, but you still have to make the save. He did that. He made another save in the second half, another bullet header. What do you make of Joe Hart recently? And I hate to say it, but would probably be in a worse place. We probably would have dropped more points if it wasn't for Joe Hart recently. What's your thoughts?
100% agree. I think every season he's been here, he's taken some sort of stick, usually around about November, December, and people start questioning, is he good enough to be a first choice keeper? The answer for that little question is no, he's probably not long term because of his age and all the rest of it. But see, for just now, in this moment, in the last few games of this season, he has pulled us out of some sticky situations, as you say, Gavin. Could have been a lot worse. We definitely could have dropped more points if it wasn't for Joe Hart. He's a big character in the dressing room by all accounts. I actually had to Google that quickly while you were talking about it. I did not realise his contract actually runs out in about 4 months' time. And this is a state that Celtic are in that we need to tie him down for next season, because we can't risk losing him, Siegrist, Toby, if he comes back from his loan deal and isn't good enough, whatever, and that we actually might go into next season with Scott Bain as our only recognised goalkeeper. That's actually quite shocking. I want somebody better long term, and I mean no disrespect to Joe Hart for that. As I say, he's came in for a lot of stick almost every season, but I think he has, over the course of his time here, been one of our better keepers that we've had in my living history anyway. But we probably need to tie him down for next season, just at least so we've got the experience of the backup if we do actually go out and scout and recruit somebody as a first choice. But that's a whole other question and conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a worrying thing. Like people did speak about the goalkeeping situation. If it was feasible to spend half decent money on a future number one keeper, but to have him as an understudy for Joe Hart, I don't think it works like that, me personally. Like if it happened, I would have been, very happy with Joe Hart and then a good understudy up until the summer anyway. But I think if you're going to shell out half decent money for a goalkeeper who respects himself as being the number one, he wouldn't want to kind of sit on the fringes, sit on the bench for half a season until he gets his chance. But at the end of the season, the homework needs to already have been done. They should have a shortlist. I'm sure they do. Whether that shortlist is quality enough from our perspective, Joe Hart's certainly an upgrade in Barkas and the disappointment of Barkas, but that will be a problem position in the summer, and we need to hope that the board deliver on that. Anthony, I know that we've still got part of the game to kind of get through, but what is your overall thoughts on the goalkeeping situation and how important is it to replace Hart? And I guess the other thing is Joe Hart, a lot of confidence, a lot of leadership that we don't see really behind the scenes. That's a void, that's a drop off as well. We bring in another one, but we might bring a guy who's worth the salt as a goalkeeper, but is he going to bring that kind of leadership to the team? If we're losing it from Joe Hart, we need it elsewhere. But I guess that's a kind of an open-ended question from your thoughts on the goalkeeping situation.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I know, Stephen particularly, he was very keen to get a new goalkeeper in last season. I think when Brendan came in, he made the decision quite quickly. Then I think he made that point. He says, I don't need Ederson in goals. I mean, Joe's more than, he can do the job that he's paid to do. And as I say, I'm a fan of Joe Hart, not blind to a lot of his faults, and absolutely there was a few games pre-Christmas where he was throwing a couple in, but you're absolutely bang on, Gav. Especially on Saturday, made 2 or 3 absolutely terrific saves. Not no chance with the goal, has to be said, but for everything he brings, and like you say, not just his ability, but it's that leadership as well. And obviously that's something that we might chat about later on as well, with the fact that a lot of the senior players in the dressing room seem to have had a bit of reading of the riot act to some of the rest of the squad on Saturday. You only have to look at Joe Hart and everything he's achieved in the game to know he's one of the guys that almost, I know they all say respect is earned, but I think he has more than earned it for wherever he goes. And I think he's been terrific in the 2 and a bit years that he's been at the club. And having said that, I would be of the opinion that as I say, Stephen's comments came up there, and I totally agree with what he's saying. He wanted that change last year. I thought he was fine for this year, but I think I would agree with him definitely for the start of next season. I would want a new number 1. I didn't actually have much thought. I just assumed with his contract running out that he would have earned that sort of walk round the pitch. But we hope it will be Hampden as well, obviously, lifting the cup and getting that proper kind of Celtic send off as we're used to doing with the boys that have been good servants to the club. And then he would, I can't remember which team it was that he started his career, but I think there was always something about him wanting to finish on his on the books there as well. So I didn't imagine him staying for another season as the sort of almost the Seagrass to the team. But you may have a fair point with the fact that there's quite a few keepers out of contract in the summer as well, and I don't think Benji Seagrass is going to be any great loss, but definitely whoever takes over for Joe Hart, it's big gloves to fill.
It sure is. It sure is. Right, we're going to wrap up the remaining part of the game. O'Reilly, he had a half volley in the second half that went straight at the keeper, one of those kind of like bouncing efforts, and then he had a header cleared off the line. O'Reilly had another shot safe when he was kind of played through on goal. And it kind of makes me think, like, there was a lot of kind of tight games, like even under Ange at Parkhead, but we just got that kind of rub of the green. And, we wouldn't really be as downhearted right now if one of those chances went in for us. But, we conceded the goal right at the end. By the way, see, I felt that one of the turning points in the game, Anthony, tell me if you remember this, but it was roughly about the hour mark when we were playing from the back and kind of doing the horseshoe routine, from full back to defence, full back. And Scales just messed up his technique for one of the passes. And it meant that we retreated back 10 yards as the press came fully on us. And at that point, you could hear the murmurs in the crowds. And I'm not saying for a moment that transmit. Oh, you could perhaps, if we're being honest with ourselves, perhaps there is an element that does transmit onto the players. But it was that particular moment I felt where Scales messed up a little bit. He didn't lose the ball, but we retreated back 10 yards. The press went on full fold by Kilmarnock, and we just lost composure, and we never regained it for the remaining part of the game. And that's really, really worrying. I remember, I don't know if it was last season or this season, Joe Hart made an error at Ibrox against Rangers, an unforced error, and we took forever and a day to get our composure back. It was a good half-hour chunk of the game where we just invited the pressure on from the opposition, and it makes me kind of embarrassed how weak we are in those instances, mentality-wise, where if you make a mistake, okay, put it behind you, but it just transmitted to the team. McGinty, are you aware of these instances like that with Celtic in games where it's like the team as a whole are affected by this, and it takes a while for them to regain their composure? I felt that was the turning point in the second half, and that's ultimately why we dropped the 3 points. Is that a feature that you've picked up on?
For years. That's kind of been a Celtic thing, as I know we get the sound bites this week where the players are saying that they're not affected by the noise in the stands as such, and that they actually feed off it, or they're playing for the fans and they understand the frustrations and whatnot. But it's something that we as fans, we get that frustration because we see something happen that just knocks us for six. How many times have you seen something happen in the back line where, was it Bobo Baldy back in the day would make a bomb scare of a pass, and then you just saw the confidence drain out the team, and for the next 10, 15 minutes, everybody's just waiting for that goal to be conceded. Sometimes it came, sometimes it doesn't, and we're kind of that's kind of like this whole season right now, isn't it? We get the early goal, and then we spend the next 45 minutes to an hour kind of just panicking and worrying and passing the ball around the back and just inviting pressure onto us, inviting that mistake to happen. And you can see it coming from a mile away. And it's exactly what happened for me in the games like Kilmarnock, where, instead of going for the kill and getting the second and the third goal, we just, it's all the time. It's not just a one-off thing. It's not just... It's the same thing my dad used to say. It's a tangent here now, but my dad used to say it all the time, where people would want Celtic to run down the clock, get the ball into the corner flag and just run the clock down. Celtic can't play like that. We don't know how to do that. We shit the bed every time we try and hold on to the ball and try and kind of, just play down the clock or pass the ball around the back. We just constantly invite pressure on us. It's not a Brendan Rodgers thing, although he's very much at fault currently for a lot of things. It's not a Rodgers thing. It's not a Lennon thing. It's not a Martin O'Neill thing. It's not a Tony Mowbray thing. It's across the board. We just don't play that way. Perhaps it's because we should and try to play on the front foot that we're just not comfortable on the back foot. But it's one of those things, Gavin. It's not just a kind of one-off that we noticed in the Kilmarnock game or one-off that we noticed last month. So it's always, and it's now building and feeding into the anxiety within the support, I think.
Yeah, it makes me think of when we played Kilmarnock at Rugby Park earlier on this season, where I think we were 1-0 up at half-time, and then in the second half, it was all Killie, and they ended up winning that game. And it was, you're watching a full 45 minutes of total domination by an opposition in the domestic league, and you're thinking, this should not happen to Celtic. Where is the leadership? Where is the in-game management? How are we not able to make changes to affect the game? And by the way, you might laugh at this, but I felt one player who was impervious to that type of panic amongst the ranks was Aaron Moy. Do you remember last season, semi-final, I think it was, or the final against Rangers at Hampden? It was like half an hour to go, and we're starting to kind of panic a wee bit. Rangers are getting on the front foot. Aaron Moy comes on, and he's just like, I'm not even going to quicken my play. I'm just going to play my own game. Gets the ball, good technical ability. He just looks for his man. He was not losing it, and he was just finding his players. He was just sticking to the game plan, just doing Aaron Moy stuff, just chill pill, you know what I mean? I just felt like a player of his ilk. He was just too experienced to get bothered by the atmosphere around him. And I wish we had more players like him. I know that people say, well, Aaron Moy only had 6 good weeks at Parkhead. Maybe so, maybe not. But Aaron Moy wouldn't be affected by that sort of thing. And it'd be nice if we had more players like that. That's another kind of accusation at the recruitment, where we always go for project players. Why don't we occasionally assign an experienced player? Anyway, we concede at the very end, the equaliser. Anthony, Bernabe, his fault?
Yeah, I would say so. And I cannot, but because it was taking 4 minutes for VAR to come to the decision, or it certainly felt that way. And I didn't think it was a foul at the start. The thing that I thought that it might have been just when the ball had come in, it's over the far side of the park. I thought, maybe there's a hint of offside or something like that. But then when the big screen came up, says VAR checking, potential foul. Even then I thought, well, it must have been a foul on Scales or someone like that, because I thought it definitely wasn't a foul on the boy that won the header, but obviously that was the one they looked at. But no, if it's a contact sport, it's never a foul in a million years. And it's just the thing with Bernabei. I mean, going forward, he's actually not bad. There was a couple of times he actually got the ball and went on a wee run when he came on Saturday. But it's his lack of positional awareness at the back is frightening, really. I mean, I would probably say in terms of not doing the main job that he's meant to do, if you're a defender, your main job's to defend. I'm struggling to think of too many players that are worse at the lack of being able to do their main job. I mean, I remember, years growing up, they always used to, guys like, Mo Camara used to get it a lot at left back as well, didn't he? But and obviously more close to Diego Laxalt in the COVID season. He just almost like he won a competition to play for football for a season. But yeah, this guy's just not the answer in any way, shape, or form. And I get the whole, we've got a wee, he's Argentinian and he's got a wee kind of cheeky smile on his face when he's out doing his warm-ups and stuff like that. But, as whatever Celtic class is, he's no it. And he was pretty much just somebody I thought we can come in and fill in until Greg Taylor's fit. And, Taylor had a decent game when he came back on Saturday, but for whatever happens in the summer in the left back position, and I'm sure that will be an area where we look to, recruit. But Bernabei's absolutely not the answer at any level, I would argue.
Yeah, I agree. That actually made me think, out of all the South Americans that we've signed, and granted, there's not been that many. But before I continue, Anthony, what are you drinking in that classic glass that you've got there?
Yeah, I'd love to say it's just diluting juice, black currant diluting juice, mate. I'm off the baby for Lent, so yeah, rock and roll for me for the next few weeks.
It's a fancy looking glass, aye.
Yeah, it was a birthday present from part of my birthday loot from the family. So I've enjoyed a few stronger drinks in it. Don't get me wrong, the last few weeks, but yep. Definitely the soft drinks for here till Easter Sunday.
Good. It looks like a kind of cocktail glass. Out of all the kind of South American players that we've ever signed, can anyone think of a success apart from Izagiri? Like, we've not had that many. I had like Gamboa, obviously 2 Brazilians, Juninho and Shite.
Need we say more? Juarez was one. Well, I suppose Mexico's more
Central
Mexican,
America, yeah.
That's more central.
I think only Izagiri.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
I can't think off the top of my head. I can't think of any that's really come in and looked the part.
Did we not? Who was the? Did we not have a Venezuelan? Was it not like Lasad Nue was one?
Yeah, that was. It was about it. I actually think either him or Miku. We bought Lasad and Miku in on the last day of the summer window under Lenny, didn't it? And I think one of them started. I think when you actually look at the team that started against Barcelona, one of the 2 of them were playing because Hooper was injured that night. Incredible when you think about it.
I think it was Miku who started. McGinty, is Miku Venezuelan?
He is, yeah.
Yeah. Well, didn't really make much of an impact anyway. Right, okay, so game finished, and it's Groundhog Day. We are now second in the league. Before we move on to the next point, we do have a theme that we try to do. It's the Super Six. McGinty, can you oblige with that and let everyone know the standings, please?
Of course I can. Here's something I put together myself. Absolutely not. Stephen kindly passed this over to me. I'm not going to get into the depths of it because I'm not entirely sure how good some people are, but we'll read off the kind of top 10 as it is. We've got Alistair Jack, which is still in number 1 position. Stevens, number 2. Joe Finlay, 3rd. Kieran Kahuli, 4th. Down from 3rd is Mark Robson at 5th. Ryan Taylor at 6th. Anthony, yourself in at 7th place. I think you've stayed there for quite a while. Kevin Hampsey at 8th. James Bowie at 9th. And our good old man Francis Carty is in 10th place, which again, I think he's been 10th for quite a while now as well.
I think it'll be something that we'll have to get ourselves involved in for next season. I don't really know what it kind of involves, but I want to get my name up there anyway. Right, so We are at the business end of the season. Now, performances and results alarmingly look to be getting worse as the season progresses. Certainly, a type of form that you would rather have at the start of the season, get it out of the way, and then build up momentum. But really, we've not had any momentum this season. What I ask you guys, are we out of solutions? So, how many games have we got? 12 games left domestically.
Yeah.
Now, if we win all our games, yes, then we can win the league. But I don't see anything. I don't see any fire. We'll obviously talk about Rangers, but one of the things I remember in the Brendan Rodgers interviews was back in December, before we hit the really bad form, and we were playing away to St Johnstone. Now, after the game, Brendan said at half-time, that was the angriest I've ever been in my managerial career. Now, whenever you hear something like that, you're like, you must have been angry. And then we won the game 3-1. We got a reaction in the second half. Now, if I hear my manager saying that, like, that's not good enough just for that 45 minutes. If he was that apoplectic, then you should have got a spur. You should have got a reaction for a good part of the remaining the following games, the subsequent games. But we just reverted back to type. I find that so alarming that Rodgers can apparently lose his cool, start swearing at everybody, which is out of character, apparently. But yet, the following two games, we revert back to character. I find that really, really scary. So, Anthony, how can we put things right? Like, so again, this is the kind of balance I want you to bring to the show tonight. I know that McGinty might be a glass half empty, but if we've got a league to win, how do we change things? Because we've got in Ida and Kyogo with the partnership. Is it working? I don't know. We're still getting lucky. We get lucky at the Hibs game, but then we drop points at the weekend. What solutions, what tactical solutions, what mentality solutions can we do to save the season?
Well, I think one of the things that I was obviously speaking about, and it's going to be the theme of the next article that I print on the Celtic blog, mate, is I think in terms of mentality, I think what we have to do, and you could argue that it should have happened long before now, and I totally agree with you in terms of the St Johnstone game, because it was almost the other way about that weekend, because we were terrible in the first half, but we got a grip of it in the second half, and you did think from there we were going to kick on. In the midweek game, I think we won 4-0 against Hibs that night, and you did kind of think, well, normal service has resumed almost. But then, of course, you had the two back-to-back video nasties with Rugby Park, and then even worse, Hearts at home. And one of the things I was talking to the guys about the weekend is that's one of the things that I think a lot of fans are getting frustrated at this year. It's the amount of obviously we've dropped points, but we've dropped a lot of points at home as well, which is even what you think back right at the start of the season. We drew with St Johnstone, obviously lost at Hearts, but even some games that we've actually won, we've not done it in any sort of convincing manner. I know there's reasons for that, but as much as I can subscribe to the injury thing to an extent, I still do think there's enough in that squad that should be able to put on a dominant performance at home against the likes of Kilmarnock, against the likes of Ross County, and certainly put up more of a fight than what we did against Hearts that day. But when you talk about what we're saying there about Joe Hart and what he brings, what Callum McGregor, the captain, should be bringing, obviously, even, it was Greg Taylor that sort of let it slip. As I say, maybe just been answering an honest question put to him. But as much as I'm not a big fan of these public confirmations, we had an in-house clear the air kind of reading of the riot act at full time to the play. It definitely sounds to me as if guys that have been there over the course are probably, and for me, more in Brendan's camp, and with the sense that they know that some of the guys that they're sharing a dressing room with just plain and simply aren't good enough. And I actually think it's want to be one of my hypotheses that I think that's why we didn't actually bring more players in January, because I actually think there possibly has been one or two more kind of similar kind of project type being offered at Rodgers, and he's absolutely just saying no. It's only guys that he wants or stopgaps until he gets the players that he actually wants. That's why the number of players brought in was so low in the January window. My first thing is just about your actual mentality, having that swagger, and I think there's perhaps too many players in the dress and on the park at the minute that perhaps don't seem to get it, perhaps don't seem to get necessarily what's at stake. And the guys were talking about it in the double pivot last week about certain models and types of players that you can bring in, whatever. And that's one of the things that I would say that Celtic is always slightly handicapped with when it comes to player recruitment, and the fact that the part of the pond that we can only realistically fish in, it's not just the talent, the raw talent that you're trying to sign. You do have to sign somebody that more or less has to hit the ground running straight away. You don't get much time, if any, to settle at Celtic, especially if you're brought in the January window, because other teams, even big teams in the Eredivisie or whatever, it's not the biggest shock in the world if perhaps say if Ajax don't win the league, or if Brighton's the flavour of the month down south as well. But these teams, even if they have a poor campaign, nobody's necessarily saying too much about it. At Celtic, the pressure's on. I think Paul Lambert actually said you're always a draw away for a disaster. So we're in full-blown crisis in that moment. With the way things are going at the minute, we did look like, in my eyes, that we had turned a corner. We got that little run of games together, and even the games that we didn't play well in, but we got over the line. That's where I wrote last week about winning ugly, still winning, and this is going to wars. This is a dogfight now, and they're never going to be pretty spectacles. But even when you look at how we played against St Mirren and how we started against Kilmarnock, I just thought, right, well, win your way out of these problems, and then from that there should just be like a natural progression back into the Celtic that we all know and love so well, that are 90% of the time dominant. But Saturday just seemed to be it's almost like one step forward, two steps back at the minute. I can only hope that, as much as I don't like it getting out in the public space, and of course the media don't exactly need much encouragement to write negative stuff about Celtic, but if it's been to the point where your Callum McGregors, your Joe Harts, your Greg Taylors have just said, enough's enough, and like I say, locked the dressing room door and went through some of these new guys and made it clear, crystal clear, what's expected and what's at stake now, with 12 games to go. That's it. I mean, I don't necessarily. I think the team at the minute, with Kyogo in the 10 and Ida featuring, I think, especially in the first half, it looked like that could work for us. But we need something. We need something to change in terms of to get that confidence levels back. And when you do that, the positive results can come from there. But I totally agree with what what the guys have been saying in the group chat. It's hard to try and pinpoint exactly what that will be. But what I would say though is just to try and spin it on their way. And I know it's went the other way momentum wise. But that's, you absolutely can't. You can't ignore that. But if we'd have won at the weekend and they'd dropped 2 points, I don't for. I mean, obviously they don't have they always have the the media or whatever backing them, and you only have to see it tonight. They're 2 points ahead, and all the guys on Clyde One that are always saying when Celtic are 9 and 10 points clear that everything's still to play for, are categorically saying this is now Rangers to lose and all this. It's completely framed in different ways. But if we were sitting still 2 points ahead, they guys across the Clyde, and rightly so, wouldn't be conceding anything. So that's why I'm certainly not going to concede anything. I always say you only celebrate a title when you're 4 clear with a game to play. I'll only concede it when we're 4 behind with a game to play, so to speak. But to say that this is a dogfight now could be an understatement of the century, mate.
Yes. I do agree with that sentiment. McGinty, say you're the manager, okay? From a man who's played Football Manager enough in his life. If you're the manager, what are you doing? Tell me. What are you doing to change things?
I'll not be as drastic as I would be in Football Manager, which is literally to sack the entire team and sell them all for as much money as I can, then go buy Wonder Kids, because we don't have any place for project fucking signings anymore at this club. I don't know. I mean, in the group chat, I've been talking about kind of flip-flopping between, Rodgers should walk at this point to kind of like hold himself a lot bit of respect and kind of say, look, I've done what I can, but hands are tied behind my back with this kind of club that's been run by the board, and kind of save himself some face with fans, but at the same time, give the club a chance to get a new manager in to get perhaps a bounce that we could go on to something, because something's wrong. I don't know what's wrong specifically. Rodgers can take a lot of blame, but I don't know if he's definitely not fully. Anyway, not the question. If I was the manager, what would I do?
Right, formation for one.
I would. Would you
change your formation? Would you go back to 4-3-3?
I wouldn't go for the 3-5-2 or variations of a 3 at the back, which some people have suggested. I think that's a bit too drastic, and we certainly do not have the centre backs readily available to do that for a prolonged period of time of over a few games. I would stick with a 4-3-3 or a variation of it. I do like that we're trying to play 2 up front, but I would be looking, if I was the manager, I'd be looking to lean on guys like Kennedy. And I know I've criticised Kennedy on many a podcast over the years as well, but
you criticised today as well on our group chat. I think it was today.
I did.
It was a matter of.
But if guys like Kennedy, right, I'll hold my hands up and say he's not a football manager, and he should never be given the keys to the kingdom of Celtic ever again, even on an interim basis. So if the worst kind of thing happens, then no, he shouldn't get there. But Rodgers, Ange, Lennon, everybody says that Kennedy's a great coach, and he's been around the block quite a few times at this club now. He knows what it's all about, and he's been there with Rodgers when he was winning, and Rodgers when he was coming to the end of his tenure the first time around. So he knows what that arch was like, that bloody kind of the highs and the excitement of the treble invincible season, and he knows what it's like when it's coming to an end and things will get a bit too passive. He also knows how bad it can be when you play a system like Lennon, but he also knows how great it can be when you play a system like Ange. So if I was Rodgers and I was wanting to try and salvage the season, it's all right coming out with all the sound bites and saying I'm not telling the players to do anything different that they weren't doing last year. They're clearly doing something wrong. I would be leaning on Kennedy and getting him to start earning his keep and find out what else is needing done, or what else is Rodgers not doing that was being done previously with these players, to try and get them to get some life back into them. And we can all tell you what that is. Rodgers, it's playing with a bit more tempo, playing with a little bit more aggression in your attacking play, get rid of the sideways passing. But he's not going to do that. He's far too stubborn in his ways. He believes his own system works, so he's not going to do anything that we suggest he should. As far as what do we do as fans or as a club, and what do we hope for going forward?
Can I ask
we need to just hope. Yeah.
Can I ask you, right? So with the midfield complexion, we've taken out Bernardo. Kyogo now operates one of those roles just off Ida. What about if we put in Awata and pushed McGregor up forward?
Yes, 100%.
Take out Ida or whatever and put Kyogo back in there. I don't care about the centre forward position, but what about Kalmack further up and Awata in there? I'm not a massive fan of Awata because I think he's just had too many cameo appearances to either write him off or to say that he's a great player. But that is a change. Maybe it gives a wee bit more defensive solidity. Maybe it puts more onus on Callum McGregor to add to the creative side. Look, until we get Hatate back, he's been a massive, massive miss. is that something that might shake it up? I guess it doesn't. That doesn't solve your wing play issue. But how on earth do we solve the wing play issue right now? It's a revolving door. You take a turn, I'll take a turn.
I'll go with what you're trying to say, I think, a little bit and expand on it slightly, but try and keep it as short as I can here. He needs more experience. Overall, the club has too many projects and too many developments. So for the here and now, the best thing you could do is get as much experience and as much sensibility in that squad as you can. Is it playing Awata? Probably. And I know he doesn't have much game experience, but he's got the age on him. Get guys like James Forrest back in on the wings instead of trying to play Yang and Tilio and whoever else that might crop up next week in a Mark Lowell recruitment budget. Get the experience back into the side. If we need to play with heart and passion and all the rest of it and just play through this, then guys like Forrest might be the way forward. Guys like Awata, keep Taylor and get rid of Bernaby completely. You know, Scales keeps his place. Carter Vickers comes straight back in. I think he's back for next week. And just get level heads back in there and keep it not simple, but get level heads in there with big experience who know what they're doing and they're not going to be caught on the headlights as such.
Anthony, you hear whenever some teams are really kind of floundering, you hear the phrase "go back to basics." Does that apply to Celtic? Can we ever go back to basics, or is there too much expected of us to force games because we've got the majority possession? Can we go back to basics? Is it ever that simple?
Yeah, I think it's one of those kind of cliched sort of terms, Gav, isn't it? But I suppose in terms of what we would want to be doing, and as I say, you were bang on with that whole passage of play in the 60th minute at the weekend, where it's just so much of the pressure that we invite on ourselves is, you know, if it was a tennis match, it would be classed as an unforced error. And like you say, it's not just a Brendan thing this season. It's something that's happened for long and weary. I think, I think it might just be something on that, you know, one of the other things that, you know, we're due a win or we're due a big win or something like that. And it might well be, you look at perhaps what happened across the Clyde this year. Obviously, we went ahead. I think it was when one point, they still had their games in hand because they still had games to play. But I think it was just before or just after they'd sacked Michael Beale. We were at either 9 or 10 points of a difference. And I think because they were going to St Mirren on the Sunday, there was always champion. St Mirren did a great start to the season. I think that was Rangers were still managerless at the time. I think Clement had still to be unveiled. So all the rest, like everything was set for another, you know, St Mirren were going to turn Rangers over. This was going to turn into, the league was going to be over before, you know, we started buying our Halloween sweeties and all this kind of thing. But Rangers then went out that day and they won, even though it was interim. I think they just lost that game in Europe to, you know, some, you know, five-a-side team had just beat them over there. I can't remember what their name was. So they say everyone thought it was going to be a walk in the park for St Mirren, were the favourites almost, and it didn't turn out that way. Rangers dealt with things very professional that day. I think they won 2 or 3-0, and then after that, then Clement came in and they've went on a good run in terms of scoreline. I would never argue that there's been many great performances in there, but you can't argue with a team that's putting results on the board. And I think it's almost like we're needing something like that. It might always mean, I know for a fact, I've already priced into my thinking, come Saturday night, the phone-ins and everyone will be polluting your Facebook news feed that, you know, you never see them for most of, I've not seen them much from the last 10 years, apart from the odd Saturday. But come Saturday night, they'll be absolute world beaters again. And it'll be like, oh, is it going to go to 5? And then if they've dropped points against Dundee at home, are they going to go to 8 points and all that? We're needing that to go out on Sunday at Fir Park and just do something almost, like you say, almost like a basic win, like a no frills, nothing, not even any necessarily big wonder goals or even a 5 or 6-0 win or anything like that. Just going out, I use the term with Franny a lot, a hassle-free 2-0, just go out, points on the board and you get out of there and then build for there. But having said that, that's what we thought we were kind of doing the last few weeks, and it's obviously not materialised. So until we see more evidence of us looking like we can put together a string of results, it's just going to have to be playing take it one game at a time, so to speak.
Yeah. McGinty, some of the comments in the media, I want to get your take on it. Now, against St Mirren, when we beat them 2-0 last weekend, Neil Lennon was kind of, supporting Brendan Rodgers, as you would expect. No criticism there. And he was saying, like, you would think that we're in kind of crisis mode. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing here. I've not written down his comments. But we stick it up for Brendan. He's saying, like, you would think that the world is coming to an end, and they were highlighting that we've won X amount of games in like a spell. And they were kind of implying it was the media who was driving that narrative. And in terms of the media, like, I don't really pay attention that much to Scottish media. I certainly don't listen to like the Super Scoreboard or anything like that. I just don't find any satisfaction. I find it negative energy. Like, I prefer listening to Celtic podcasts and talk to you guys, But whenever they said that, I just felt it was a wee bit like, don't take us for fools, though. You can't lie to the fans. You can't pull the wool over the fans' eyes. And they were kind of guffawing at the criticism that Celtic have faced. And like, we're not in crisis mode. We're still winning games. But the wins that we have been collecting are papering over the cracks. I found that a little bit patronising. Just a little bit patronising. And then Brendan Rodgers at the weekend after the game, he said, we almost got away with it. We almost got away with it. And then maybe Greg Taylor, another thing that's annoyed me is Greg Taylor in his interview said, well, it's only February. People need to keep it in perspective. But we are on the cusp. We're on the cusp right now of, without getting our act together, it will get too far ahead of us now. We need to arrest this slump in performance. So I guess my point is, sometimes whenever we're having moments like this, I want to see more fire from people. I want to see people calling each other out. And I don't see it like Anthony mentioned earlier on about Cam McGregor or Greg Taylor admitting that they're having kind of clear the air talks. I don't see that as airing your knickers in in public. Sorry, airing your dirty knickers in public. I don't see that as a bad thing as such. I think if you start throwing people properly under the bus, then maybe that's something that should be looked at. But I want to see more fire in the media. I don't want to be patronised. Don't piss on me and tell me it's raining. What's your thoughts on what we're hearing from the media, and does it annoy you as a Celtic fan? Do you find it patronising like I do?
If Neil Lennon is talking about the fans, wetting their own knickers and telling the fans to calm down or arrest it and crisis mode talks, and I wouldn't listen to Neil Lennon in any of this chat because the COVID season's far too fresh in my memory for him to be coming out and telling the fans what we can and cannot feel, think, or see, or what we understand about football, because he clearly got that massively wrong when he was in maybe a very similar situation to what Rodgers is in just now, which is the fans are able to see that the performances are not good enough. Point blankly, not good enough. We've all been talking about this since October, being generous, being kind, that something's not quite right. We were looking forward to January and getting some fresh faces in to try and bolster and rejuvenate the squad going forward. The media is one thing. Gavin does wear knickers, yes. The media is one thing that I think the club always, especially the manager players, always try to play down the effect that the media can have, and especially in the social media days. And when you listen to Rodgers talking, even before the game, I think it was Friday's press conference, I remember listening to the radio and listening to stuff that he's been talking about, and they were asking him about the pressure and the run of form and all the rest of it. And he was quite right at the time before the game at the weekend to highlight that, was it 8 out of 9 or 9 out of 10 games we'd actually won, and we're actually result-wise on a very good run. which is right to do. And I think if you attribute that along with comments that obviously Greg Taylor and Cal McGregor have made post-game, I think those players, Joe Hart included there as well, and the Rodgers are probably trying to keep something together at the club with the squad, to try and keep that positivity going, because yes, they can clearly see that the performances aren't right. The manager's changed two up top in some capacity. He's also very, very pissed off, shall we say, about January and not having the players at his disposal and the lack of quality stuff. There's no getting away with it. He can sugarcoat it as he wants. He can try and soften the blow for the board if he wants to, but he's clearly not happy with how things have went, and he can't be happy with performances either overall. I'll plays down to tools, another conversation for later, but I think if you look at comments that Rodgers are making, the players are now making as well, it's not something we usually do. And if they're coming out for these, I'm actually way off on a tangent. I forgot what your question was, Gavin, but let me keep going. If these guys are coming out with these comments in the media, it's something that we don't normally do as a club, then I wouldn't think that I wouldn't say it's a very, very bad sign, but I think it's an encouraging sign that there's leaders in the club, in the squad, and the manager. I think it's an encouraging sign that they're trying to do something. They're trying to get the corner turned, sort of thing, and to try and clear things up with the players, because there's something not quite right. Whether it's good enough or it's going to succeed is another matter. For me, we're one game away from this really being it. It's still in our own hands and all the rest of it. People want to say beat them twice and all that stuff. And if we go on a run of games of 8-9 games without losing again, then it very much does go down to the last 3 or 4 games, and it really does get quite exciting for people who like that sort of excitement in their life. But yeah, I don't know.
You know what's kind of weird? I almost, if we were to play Rangers at the weekend, I don't think I would be fearful. I think there's a bigger chance of us slipping up against the worser teams in the league. I just think that, if we were to play Rangers tomorrow, it would kind of take care of itself. I think the performances might not be as bad as what I would fear in my head. A lot of comments about the type of underwear that I wear. You guys will never know. I will not disclose that sort of information on a podcast. I want to move on to Brendan Rodgers itself. Brendan Rodgers himself, and has he lost his mojo? Now, I am mindful as soon as I created that kind of topic, that question, that it's not all on Brendan Rodgers. There will be several scapegoats come the end of the season, or even if we were to pause right now and analyse where it all went wrong. Well, one thing, injuries, you cannot legislate for injuries. Things happen like that. And recruitment, of course, that's, you can level that at Brendan Rodgers, but that's not his collective responsibility. Recruitment, he depends on a network of people at Celtic Park to kind of deliver on that. But one thing I will say is, has any player improved under Brendan Rodgers? Anthony, I know that you do bring positivity to this, but I thought that this would be one question that might rankle with yourself. You might find that a bit of difficulty with this one. Has any player improved under Brendan Rodgers this season?
I would argue up until the end of the January window, it's almost he's just pushed on it even further again would be O'Reilly. And I suppose just with the season that he's having, you would say Liam Scales as well. But having said that, for a guy who's a huge part of his reputation as a stellar manager, it was about how he can develop, but bring on several players at any given time. But I see James Forrester, or good blogging friend, he's in the chat tonight, and I think what he's saying there is absolutely bang on with regards to Brendan. I think he's caught between a rock and a hard place at the moment, and I'm definitely not blind to say that he can't be sort of a wash of all blame from it. But the same sort of reasons why he left the club I think perhaps we were all guilty of looking at everything at that time through a 10-in-a-row prism, and there's no doubt that Brendan leaving put that in serious jeopardy, and obviously we ended up failing to achieve the quest in the end. But I think because we were so angry about it, that I think perhaps even he himself was a bit shocked at how quickly Celtic fans it was like a circling of the wagons, and it was pretty much he was ostracised. And very much, I think the timing and manner of his departure probably protected people above him from getting more stick, more criticism, and probably the microscope going on them more than what it probably should have done. As much as we didn't like the way it happened the first time, I don't think the reasons why Brendan did what he did were in the wrong, shall we say. I think his frustrations were starting to boil over from the summer before, when, and I don't want to go down that whole saga again, but that he'd progressed the club, he wanted to go to the next level, and he was not going to the board with demands to go toe to toe with Pep Guardiola for summer recruits. It was very realistic targets that he gave, and then the guys above them decided that they knew football better than Brendan Rodgers and tried to outsmart other clubs and do underhand bids for players, or in some cases just not bid at all. And I think what's probably happened to him is, he's left and he's seen an opportunity to come back. He's obviously seen how Ange was allowed to basically bring in the players that he wanted, and it looked very much as if it was a very smooth process, especially the first two windows where he identified the players he wanted. They were all realistic targets. He wasn't asking for the world. Chief executive and the recruitment team went out, got the deal done, player came in, fitted into the squad, and that was it. He's probably looked at that from the outside in and thought, well, maybe there has been a lot of changes. And I've only ever surmised, I don't think he would have came back to the club unless he'd been given the kind of assurances that he'd be allowed to have the same kind of authority or autonomy, on the team, the footballing side of things. And I think very quickly, it's almost as if he's been led up the Clyde in a banana boat. And I think he is probably still, people maybe say he only cares about himself or whatever, but I think there's a part of him that thinks, as I say, he doesn't regret leaving Celtic, but maybe regrets, the kind of negativity that surrounded it afterwards. And I think there's a bit of him that wants to right that wrong. And probably at the start, when he came back in, it was different when he came over. He took over for Ronnie Dyler, which was a team that was on its arse, and it needed complete rejuvenating. This was a treble one inside that he took over, so it wasn't needing major surgery. And he's probably, I think, at some point thought, well, these guys are potentially coming in, they've maybe been signed off, well, let's go with it. But then very quick, but maybe with the idea that he'd still be allowed to bring his own players in that he wanted. He always spoke about wanting power and athleticism, and we've certainly not signed that in any of the two windows since he's came back. And I think he's constantly trying to keep two opposing sides apart. You have the board that seem to don't want to go any further than what they do, and a fan base, some of it more militant than others, that are very, very much against what's going on at the minute. And in the middle is this guy that's trying to hold this together with a squad of players that aren't necessarily suited to the type of system that he wants to play in a title race, when he's not kind of universally loved the same way he was in season 1 and 2 when he was here first time around. So that's probably why you see some flip-flopping in the press conferences and that. And it, anyone that knows anything about communication, it doesn't look great. But by the same point, it's like he seems, for me, he looks like a guy that's firefighting constantly. And of all the criticism, the one thing I don't take is the idea that he doesn't care or anything like that now, because I know there was obviously some chat about the way that he was carrying on Saturday. Believe me, I sat down that way. He was apoplectic on that sideline for lots of that game on Saturday, screaming at boys to be moving the ball quicker, moving it faster, to getting into different positions quicker. He was really, really angry. So I think the accusation that not that you're saying that, Gav, I'm just saying there's some fans, maybe just through frustration with the result, suggest that he doesn't care, and he'll always be scarred with how things ended the first time. But I get the kind of, in the heat of the moment, calling for him to go, etc. But my whole thing has always been, he's the best manager I still believe that we can attract, or that level of manager that we can attract at the minute. And I totally can get on board with a lot of everyone's frustrations and anger directed at the people above him. But if they do get rid of Brendan, or if Brendan were to, walk of his own accord, it would be those same people that we don't trust to run a Bath, let alone a football club, that would be in charge of a recruitment process with 12 games to go. And I'm not an overly betting man, but I would wager some serious money on them not hiring a candidate that we would feel that would unify the fans and the support. I think it would be very much a give Gordon a call, or get Lenny out the Sky Sports studio again. Nothing against Gordon or Lenny, two Celtic greats in their own right, but their days been and gone for me, and I just think we should be trying to get behind the manager.
Yeah, that's the balance. That's the balance that I wanted from you, Anthony. Thank you very much for that. McGinty, on reflection of those kind of points, one thing that I would say, you hear it a lot, we're a treble winning team. I remember talking to one of my friends who's a Rangers fan, and it was after they won the league a couple of seasons ago. And I was saying to him in the summer, I'm like, you've not really bought anybody. I'm like, where is the recruitment? I'm like, you need to strengthen from a position of strength. I wasn't telling him anything that he didn't know. And he says, I don't know if it was kind of bullishness, but he said, well, we'll just wipe the floor with you with a 25-point gap in the league. And we cruised to it. We went unbeaten domestically in the league. He says, do we really need to, start bringing in new players? Is recruitment really the main thing? I'm like, right, okay. I just found that a perplexing reply. And I don't know if it was just out of stubbornness, but I think even if you win, well, obviously that season tells you Celtic just got Ange. We financed a new recruitment. And then you saw what happened. You saw what happened over the next 2 years. And that's an example of why you need to strengthen even from a position of winning. And even though we won the treble last season, it's back to the start, back to basics, back to square one. It doesn't count for shit. And even if you win the treble, but we've all kind of, on reflection, highlighted, only maybe Jota left and Starfelt left, Moy, the bit part player, left. But it's wider than that. There's more context to it than that. You always need to strengthen. So that's one thing. And kind of in defence of Rodgers, we've not adequately replaced. We've not taken it seriously. That's probably the right phrase I'm looking for. We've not taken the recruitment seriously this season. We've not been given it enough seriousness. And we're left with the kind of fruits of our labour right now, languishing here in second with 12 games to go. However, at the same time, one of the kind of questions I like to ask is which Celtic manager would do well with a budget, and people would say Gordon Strachan. He's one of the kind of the main candidates for that. Brendan Rodgers, he's not been given a lot of money. He has been given some money, but we've chosen poorly. So I lament the fact that he doesn't have an eye for a player. I don't think he has an eye for a player recruitment wise. Another thing that I asked Anthony was, who has he improved? One person who I really would have wanted to have seen more from him, even just consistency, is AJ at right back, but he's had a really tough time. What do you make of Rodgers? Even if you're given a shoestring budget, you make the best of what you can. Anthony did throw up a really good point that, well, Rodgers was just given kind of poor players to say we can buy him, and he would rather just stick with who he's got rather than bring in new players who we're going to give 5-year contracts to. So I guess that's one thing. Rodgers choosing to stick with who he's got. Another thing is well, you need to work with what you have. And has he really improved? So AJ is one guy that I've given you an example of. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure what you're asking me.
About Rodgers, he's a coach.
How does he?
He's made coach make players better.
But he needs to have players available to him that are coachable as such. You started this with highlighting the treble winning season that we had last year and the squad that's there. Then obviously we've lost a couple of players in the likes of Starfelt and Jota. And as you said, it's more complex than that. There's more to it. Yes, he's lost 2 key players in that lineup from last season, but he's also lost Carter Vickers and Hatate and Abada through injury for the vast majority of this season as well. He's not getting the best out of Kyogo or Taylor or even Alistair Johnson, just to bring this around to the conversation in the chat, because he's playing a system that doesn't suit those players anymore. Greg Taylor was not a great player before Ange Postecoglou came to this club. Ange made him a good player by playing him in the inverted fullback position, which as the season went on last year, we all championed it and said that's a great move because actually, lo and behold, Taylor used to play as a midfielder when he was younger. So it kind of suited his playing style to do that. And we talked earlier, Anthony mentioned about, we got players in before the windows even opened at times and everything just seemed so smooth and easy going. And that's what Ange did. He recruited players that were not unrealistic, purchases. And Alistair Johnson was probably, because of the World Cup, he's probably one of the most high-profile ones that we got because his name was getting bandied about in December before we actually brought him in the January. But he still only plays a certain way. So if you look at the team that we had last year, and the players that are either being sold, injured for long periods, or played in a system that doesn't quite suit them, it's almost the entire starting lineup minus McGregor, O'Reilly, and Joe Hart. One thing that we're obviously trying to talk about is Rodgers' ability to bring players on, to develop players. And you say you were looking forward to seeing what he could do with AJ. I was looking forward to see what he could do with Liam Labada. Injuries have curtailed that, and obviously we've discussed before about the more recent issues with Abada, which we'll not get into too much. That is what it is at this stage. But if he's not got these players readily available to him, he can't really develop them too much. And the recruitment for this is on the board and the recruitment team, whoever that may be that Mark Lowell's in charge of. If they're going to bring a guy like Rodgers in and not recruit for his style, what's the fucking point? Because we can take the treble winning season from last year, the treble winning team, and we can see how wonderful they were. But when you lose 2 key players, you lose 3 or 4 players to injury, and then another 3 players just don't actually fit the manager style that you just hired, what's the fucking point? You don't sign somebody like Brendan Rodgers, as Anthony says, and I fully agree with him. On paper, Brendan Rodgers is one of the best managers we could get in modern times just now. Name and glamour and all the rest of it. I know he's fallen from grace a little bit after Leicester, but for all intents and purposes of where we are in the football world, Brendan Rodgers is one of the best managers we could get, realistically. And we got him twice. And yet we're not supporting him. And you've said there, you wouldn't trust Rodgers. We sign a player, he's not got an eye for a player. You're probably right to some degree. But then also, Lee Congerton's not a great scout or a great talent spot on himself, and he relied on him too much. But I'll throw 2 names back at you that he did want to bring at Celtic, which were not out with the realms of players that we should be able to acquire. Young Timothy Castagni, the left back that he wanted, and John McGinn, they are not out with, or at the time, they were not out with our budget and our ability to sign them. £4 or £5 million, 20-25k a week. Mm-hmm. We should be, our starting 11 should be full of players at that level, that kind of price point, that quality, whatever that brings you. They wouldn't bring him in for him in the first time, and they're clearly not bringing that in for him this time around either. So, what's the point in us bringing Rodgers in and asking him to develop players when the players aren't there? you can't develop Yang and Tilio and try to change Maeda's game at the same time. It's Palma's, and it's too much nonsense. There's not enough quality. There's not enough. Yeah, I don't get it.
James does bring up the point. So he agrees that he's been shafted by the board, but why is he then went on his way on numerous occasions to defend them, only to throw barbs at them a week later?
Go back to what Anthony was saying earlier. He's stuck between having to defend the board and the club to some degree to keep his own job and hopefully get something out of them later on, and actually stuck between that and us, the fans. At the end of the day, he is a fan as well. I think he's caught between it. He's trying to keep his job, not keep his job. He's trying to keep his boss happy while also trying to keep the fans happy.
See, playing devil's advocate, when I do say has he lost his mojo, there are players who had at one point in their career the zeitgeist, and then later on they just, for one reason or another, are no longer firing on all cylinders. Like Jose Mourinho at one point was one of the best managers in world football. Everybody wanted him, but now he just went down and down and down. He doesn't have that same edge. Even like players like Rafa Benitez. Rafa Benitez was a great manager at one point in Valencia and Liverpool, but now he's no longer that great manager that he was. Even Trapattoni at one point. Trapattoni was a fantastic manager. Sven-Goran Eriksson, a fantastic European manager. It's not out of the ordinary for just like players as well, although it's a different thing because they rely on athleticism, and once that goes, then they're always going to be in a downward slide. I don't know if it's a psychological thing, but I do see from what I've witnessed in football, sometimes managers have a period where they're brilliant, everybody wants them, where everything they touch turns to gold, but sometimes after a while, after a period, it just doesn't work for them. They've ran out of ideas. I'm not specific. It's difficult to judge Brendan Rodgers on that theory because of how he's been provided with the recruitment from the board. He's not been given a fair crack at the whip, if we're being honest. Injuries have conspired against him as well. But that's just one point that I would make. Can we rule out the fact that maybe he's not as hot as what he once was back then? I think that's a fair question.
Yeah, well, I think it absolutely is, and I suppose we'll not know until the proof will be in the pudding when the season finishes. Gav, one thing I would say is like, and I'm it's perhaps given the fact that he's going at the end of the season, but a lot of people were asking the same questions about Jurgen Klopp last season on the back of, Liverpool had a really poor campaign by their standards last season, and there was 7 or 8 games in a row where Liverpool had not played well at all, and Jurgen Klopp, and every post-match thing, pretty much the same that Brendan's been criticised for. Now talking, it was the same sort of terms. He just kept going, we've lost a goal there, that can't happen. But then they would lose a very similar goal the next week, and obviously Liverpool had a poor recruitment last summer. And the same questions were being asked. Is Jurgen lost his mojo? Is this team, is it tired now? But then lo and behold, when everyone could see last year with Liverpool, what was needed was they needed their midfield reinforced, and they've obviously brought the likes of McAllister and other players in as well. And you see, and I know it's maybe not the best example because obviously he's going at the end of the season, but what we're seeing from this Liverpool side this season is a team that's reinvigorated and a team that's really going to push all the way for the title. And even although I prefer Manchester United, I definitely want Liverpool to win it more than Man City because Liverpool are near a sports washing project. But it's just that kind of way, and I think we'll not know until. I don't really think we'll know until he gets to supported in the way he wants to play it and is able to have the guys in that's suited to the way he wants to play football, because we've seen how destructive and brilliant it can be for Celtic when Brendan has got what he wants on the park. But it is a fair question, and I hope the answer to the question is no, he's not. And we're celebrating the League and Cup double in May, but long way to go between now and then.
That's very true. Very true. Right, we're on an hour and 40 minutes. I guess I'm going to finish off with this final question, another positive one, and it's about the kind of fan discontent. I know that, and even in the comments, a lot of people have been balanced. Paul McFarlane, I know that you've been kind of positive, which is great to see. The league is obviously not over. It's only over until it's mathematically impossible, and there is still some positives. Things could be turned around, but it was about the fan discontent, and I think it might have been McGinty, it might have been yourself, Anthony. I forget. Forgive me. It was when he's made comment to how the 10 in a row season is still not it's still etched in your memory. In fact, McGinty, I think it was you. It was still etched in your memory, and the fan discontent and the show of emotion outside the grounds, and that's not really left us. And Anthony made the point about how the board are still there. The board are still there. Peter Lawwell went out and now he's back, and it's the same old faces. And I just wanted to kind of find out from your thoughts, if things do go in a bad way, if this season does end up poorly, as we fear it might not, but if we do fear, then how will that kind of that show of emotion from the fans manifest itself? Obviously, you've got the Green Brigade. They had a banner a few weeks back about to the board. Again, I'm paraphrasing, on your head be it. But they will kind of ramp things up. The worse things get, obviously you want to support your team, but there might be expressions after games, outside Parkhead, that sort of thing. We know what could happen. I'm just kind of wondering how bad it will be, but how ugly can it get? It's like we're kind of going back full circle, because after the 10 in a row year, we consolidated, we funded Ange, we had 2 brilliant seasons, but it's like we've kind of went back to square one again. And I think, again, as you said, the 10 in a row season is not far away. We remember it. That discontent hasn't fully went away. I feel like there's still kind of some bad blood amongst the supporters, rightly or wrongly. And I wonder if we do lose the league in the summer, what kind of scenes will we expect? I don't know if I'm kind of off the mark with that one. Do you think there's any substance to it?
I don't think that the scenes that we will see come May and June, if we were to end this season without any sort of silverware, I don't think the scenes are going to be strong enough. I think you look at the 10 season, COVID season, your metal sharks and the protests. These people in charge of our club have no respect for us at all. They physically locked us out of our stadium, out of our club. They put fences up in the disguise of COVID or whatever nonsense they wanted to say about it. They locked us out because they knew how bad it was starting to get. But at the end of the day, it was only noise. There was no real action was taken. Before it got to that stage, they knew what they were doing. They eventually got rid of Lennon, and they eventually announced Peter Lawwell was going to step down. And that squashed the mood for a little bit of time. I'm not sure the mood's probably the wrong, maybe the appetite or enough people are going to be willing to go down the route of what it would take to get real change at the club, because real change is needed. If we finish a season without any silverware in the manner that we're about to see it unfold, and I touch wood that it doesn't go this way for our own sake as fans. But I don't think the reaction would be strong enough. I don't think there's enough people in our support to see major change, which is needed at this club. I just don't have. I don't want to make it sound like I just don't have any faith in the rest of the fans. I do have. I have a lot of respect for all the fans that put on hard and money in it, and we deserve to support this club in the best way that we all seem fit. And it's good that there's people who still want to do it no matter what, but wish they would put faces up Yeah, that'd be nice.
That's the best
I know
comment of the
there's a
night. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Love it. Thank you.
The discontent, Gavin, it's still there for people like myself. It was there during the COVID season. It was there before the COVID season. This is, as Anthony said earlier as well, we could get rid of Rodgers, but it's the same board, it's the same people at the top of the table who are going to be entrusted with, finding the next manager, and we trust them to do that? No. So we can lose everything this year. We can change the manager again after this year. We can sell 12 players and sign another 20 players. It doesn't matter, because the end product is going to be the same next season. Maybe we'll do enough to scrape through and win the league next season. Maybe we won't, but we're still going to be in the same position next year, 2 years, 5 years, talking the same stuff, go through the same 2 or 3 year cycle where we win a few things, we all think everything's back to normality and we're all hunky-dory, and then realise we don't actually strengthen from the position. We don't push ourselves forward. We don't have any ambition, and we don't go anywhere where we as fans of a football club feel like we should be going.
You're right. Anthony, difficult to disagree with McGinty there. What I think he's saying is that there's going to be, when things get bad, we might see short-term fixes, which we might have just witnessed that under Ange, a 2-year period where we thought everything was going in the right direction, but reality has really kind of put us back in our place. So I guess my question to you is, do you think it could get toxic?
I think it's been toxic for a lot of different reasons all season, Gav, and there's parts of it that I don't like, and as I say, there's been a kind of simmering undertone about the section of support that just plainly didn't want Rodgers back. And when you look at especially the St Johnstone game at the start of the season, which was a draw, and when they're doing the walk around the pitch at the end, there's like coins and everything else being flung at them, that just kind of says this, Brendan himself is almost barely being tolerated, rather even alone, liked. And you just think, is this only going to work if we start? And we did go on a good run after that, and that, in terms of the manager, it seemed to simmer down. But listen, I mean, a lot of the times, Wally and myself are normally, you kind of say, like, you are kind of sticking up for the board a lot of the time. And the thing is, it's just that we're trying to just offer a bit of balance. But I think a lot of the stuff Anthony's came away with is absolutely bang on. I mean, I've got absolutely not a great thing to say about the individuals that run the club. I'm just of the opinion that, and I'd love nothing more than another Brian Dempsey or another Fergus McCann or that to come along and put some new vision into the club, because as much as we give these guys great respect about they keep the club on an even foot, etc. And I don't necessarily think not bankrupting the club that you supposedly, you're put in charge of running deserves a Blue Peter medal. To be honest, I think that's like the bare minimum of what you're supposed to do when you're a board room of a massive club like Celtic. But you look at, since Fergus and that group, rebuilt the stadium, etc., and completely changed, brought in the season ticket culture, and the revenues went through the roof. For about 20 years now, everything's sort of plateaued. There's not been like any. The only time that we're having these, they'll pat themselves on the back over the latest series interim figures, but that's all came on the back of player sales and participation. There's not really been anything from these guys. There's not been any outside of the box thinking from these guys. They have just kind of kept things ticking along to the point where other teams, Rangers, even from falling way back behind us, have been able to catch up. And the argument that we have had so many opportunities now to put these guys out of sight is a fair, and not taking them is fair. So that's why I always say about the board, it's not that I stick up for them, it's just that and maybe we do need more of a pressured environment, campaign to try and force some kind of change. My only worry is always that then has the negative impact on the park. That's all, that's always the thing that I fear the most. But you could argue, I suppose, that's happening anyway. But in terms of the individuals themselves, I've got little to no time for any of them, to be perfectly honest. And I'd love nothing more than for a new, someone like Fergus. There's not many Fergus McCanns out there, but someone like him that can, provide a bit of vision for the club. In terms of the fans itself, I think short term, regardless, I think inside the stadium, it's absolutely imperative that we try and stay focused and try and get this, get back to, let natural order restore itself and get back to the top of the league. I just hope that, this short-lived term, Rangers being at the top is, akin to, seeing an elephant at the top of a tree. Don't know how it got there, but it's not going to last too long. If we do what we do best, everything should be okay. But everybody at the club, from the manager to the players to the coaching staff, and especially those above the manager, need to get the finger out and start all pulling in the same direction.
Mm-hmm. Right, I've got an analogy for you. Now, it might fall flat in its face right now and make me look even more stupid than what I already have tonight, but I'm going to go for it. Now, to go back full cycle, I'll go back full circle whenever I ask you what your favourite movie is at the start of the show. My favourite movie is The Godfather. Now, in Godfather Part 2, which is technically not the same movie, but give me that latitude. In The Godfather Part 2, Michael Corleone, who's the new Don, he gets rid of Tom Hagen, who is his consigliere, his main man of counsel. And he gets rid of him because the Corleone family are going into a war with the other 5 families of New York. And he said to Tom Hagen, "You're not a wartime consigliere, which is why I need you to go out of the scene, and I need to bring in someone who knows how to fight a war." And that's what he did, and they won that war. And it makes me think of a comment that I saw on this podcast a few weeks back, and it was about Peter Lawwell. And he said, Peter Lawwell is an accountant by trade. And if we remember why Peter Lawwell became our chief executive back in the day, it was because we needed to consolidate. We'd overspent and we needed to rein it in. And he did that very, very successfully. But we've stuck with him for far too long. And now the landscape has shifted. And we're in a different position right now where our ambitions should now be extending further afield. But we're reining it in because he is still of that mindset, of his skill set. He wants to kind of keep us in this box. And we should have adapted to the change in environment. And we have not. And we've stuck with it. And what we should do is what Michael Corleone did and change his consigliere. And that is our feeling. So that is my analogy for tonight. I hope it resonates with other people and not just in my little head. But I think we're going to finish it off for tonight. We're now on an hour and 53 minutes. I really, really enjoyed it. My bladder is almost bursting at the seams. I need to go for a pee. But guys, I really, really enjoyed it. We will be back for the Wednesday double pivot. We'll be back for the Friday one. And obviously this weekend, we've got another game where we'll see what happens. Guys, thank you very, very much for joining me. Anthony, thank you so much for bringing balance to tonight's episode, bringing balance to the force.
Try my best, mate.
And Anthony, you've done so well not swearing tonight. I don't think you actually swore once. How did you get away with that?
Nah, I must have fucking sworn at some point.
By the way, to the viewers, thank you so much. Okay, thank you for persisting with my hosting tonight for Paul McFarlane. So we need to get rid of the Godfather. Listen to Hitman Gavin. Thank you so much. Are you advocating a hit on Lawwell? Who knows?
Careful.
Who knows? But thank you so much. Okay, we'll be back Wednesday. It'll be a different lineup, but really enjoyed it tonight. Guys, thank you again. McGinty, you're the man with the buttons tonight. Do you want to hit that outro? Do we have an outro? Or do we just stop?
No, we don't. We talk about this every weekend. No, we don't.
Do we just wave goodbye? Is that what we do?
Smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave.
Awkward.
Cheers, guys.